Digital 410 Media proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts, Don Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Dennis Blocker.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast, and we are back for another episode. Joining us from Texas, as always, Mr. Dennis Blocker. Dennis, how you doing tonight, sir?
Doing great. I'm doing good. It's nice to, we had a lot of rain, as everybody in the country knows.
Yeah.
And we had a little reprieve from that, and it looks like we might be getting some more from a tropical storm, so we're bracing for that. Been busy, doing my research for this other book I'm working on. I think I'm going to call it Sitting Ducks, but it's going to be about actually the gunboats there at Iwo Jima. So yeah, just working on that. Zach, as everybody knows who listens to the podcast, famously, after 20 years of research I did, showed me I missed out on 20 years of valuable research from the National Archives that all I had to simply do was request. So almost daily, I get packets from the National Archives now because I'm like a madman requesting their records from every single guy. So it's fun though. It's like a Christmas present every time I open the mailbox.
A little inside baseball behind the scenes for the audience. Between Dennis and Zach, we have this new research department. I was at Mission Barbecue down the street from my house, and they don't usually change the interior that often. And so when you're at a particular Mission Barbecue, you get familiar with the stuff on the wall as you're waiting for your food. And I noticed a new shadow box, and it had a nice cutout wooden Navy logo, but then it had the very distinct World War II, late World War I, early World War II oval dog tag. The Marines used them early on, but the Navy used them. And I simply took a picture of it because it said U.S. Navy Reserves, had the guy's blood type, name, service number. I texted to Dennis and Zach in a group text. And I think before I made it home, they told me when he served, what ship he was assigned to, what battles they were in, what date it got hit on. And so I'm like, well, I probably should call this Mission Barbecue and see if, did they acquire this at an antique store? Or was it donated? Because I was thinking, how cool would it be if we printed that up on a nice heavy stock and put it in a frame, and they could put it next to this dog tag that's with some ribbons and just a naval icon. But for those you at home, that's how quickly, when it comes to anything Navy related, these two gentlemen can acquire some information for you. So
Yes.
if you're looking for some information on a relative that served in the Navy between 41 and 46, just email us at mailcall@wtspworldwar2.com. And you have something as simple as the service tag code for your relative. These two could probably acquire some information that maybe you and your family's been looking for quite a while.
Well, I'll tell you, Don, that's what makes our guest tonight, Sandra, so special, is because she was doing that research before Wi-Fi. That's right. Doing it.
She crawled so that one day we could run,
Well, without any further ado, Zach, please do us the privilege of introducing our guest to the audience tonight.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Don. For those aspiring writers out there, our guest tonight is one of the most talented, all-around hardworking writers that I've ever met. She helped edit, proofread, and co-author the Amphibious Operations in the South Pacific trilogy by the late William L. McGee, which are among the best books that are ever written about the amphibious force in the South Pacific in World War II. Her contributions to those classics, especially Pacific Express and The Amphibians Are Coming, continue to inspire a whole new generation of readers. So it is my great pleasure to introduce a very special friend of both mine and Dennis's, author Sandra McGee. Thank you, Sandra, for joining us tonight.
Hey, Zach, that was a wonderful introduction. And for the viewers and listeners, I've known Zach and Dennis. I could say how long, I don't think I will, but I met them in I believe, Portland in 2001 at, help me with the name of the group, LCI.
National LCI Association.
Yeah.
Right. Zach, I don't think you were there, were you?
No, so not in '01.
Not at that particular reunion,
Yeah.
but I've known these two young men for a lot of years, and our country's history can't be in better hands than with Zach Morris and Dennis Blocker.
Oh, thank you
I
so much
feel
for
that
saying that, Sandra.
Bill and I think we discovered Dennis because we asked him to write the preface for Pacific Express. And Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was one of your first writings to be published. Am I
That was
right
my
about
first
that?
writing, my very
Yeah,
first writing to be published.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We'll never
So I
forget it.
should have gotten your autograph on a book. But anyway,
It's
thank you.
awesome.
Oh, absolutely. So let's get right into it. Speaking of Pacific Express and the Amphibians are coming and that whole trilogy, for those that have both read it and haven't read it, as an editor and proofreader, you have worked on some of the largest, most impressive collections of World War II books that, in my opinion, has
Thank
ever
you.
been written. These are so invaluable to Pacific historians, these books. I have to ask, what was you, so Bill passed away a few years ago. You said 5 years ago. When he was working on these projects with you and you were involved, what was your guys' writing process like to attack such large projects like, the Amphibians are coming, Pacific Express, for up and coming authors out there that want to write about nonfiction or World War II history in general? How did you guys approach things?
Well, Bill never set out to be a World War II military historian, so that I don't want to burst that bubble, but he had been in broadcast advertising, but behind the mic, the other side of the mic, for about 32 years, and he had done writing. They were books to teach the salesman how to sell, and he had done some videos. But he was a what they call a just the facts, ma'am type of writer, very, very bottom line journalistic. So he never set out to be a World War II military historian. But in 1991, he saw a story in the San Francisco Chronicle, a story written by Carl Nolte, and the SS Jeremiah O'Brien, which is it Doctor Berthed? I don't know the correct word, but it's in San Francisco on the Embarcadero. And the story in the Chronicle was seeking volunteers to help work on the Jeremiah O'Brien. She was a World War II Liberty ship. She had been at the D-Day landings,
Hmm.
actually made 11 crossings with material and personnel to the Omaha beach. And she now was in San Francisco. And so the trustees of that ship were looking for volunteers to help get her in shape. They had about 3 years to get her in shape to return to Normandy for the 50th anniversary in 1994. And Bill drove, we were living in Napa then, he drove the next day to San Francisco and volunteered. And he was chipping paint and scrubbing floors alongside the young salts, as he called them. And of course, to them, Bill was an old salt, and they were asking him all kinds of questions because Bill was in a branch of the service called the Naval Armed Guard, which not many people knew about. And that was a branch of service that they carried guns and they protected the ships. That was their role. And so one of the young salts said, "Well, you're a writer. Why don't you write about the armed guard? Not much has been written about the armed guard." That's all Bill needed. He was off and running, and in those days, 1991, research was by telephone, mail, very, very, I don't even know what was on the internet then, but it wasn't much. He booked a trip on a freighter, a 6-week trip to South America. And when he came back from that trip, he had the first draft for Blue Jacket Odyssey,
Wow.
which was his first World War II military history. My part in this was not very glamorous. I was the head typist, meaning I was the only typist. And Bill rented a small office We were in it together for hours and hours at a time. Didn't speak to each other. He was doing his work, I was doing mine. You don't talk. At 2 o'clock, I'd say, "Excuse me, Bill, I'm going next door to get some coffee and oatmeal cookies. I'll be right back." And Blue Jacket Odyssey was published by a traditional publisher. Will Jaffe was his last name. Can't think of his first name right now, but Bill had met him on the Jeremiah O'Brien, and Blue Jacket Odyssey was actually very well received. I'm sounding surprised because um, when I read it now, I mean, Zach and Dennis as writers, and Don, I don't know yet if you're a writer, but if you're like me, we're never happy with anything. And we open up a book and, oh my God, I want to change that.
Amen.
So when I look at Blue Jacket Odyssey now and I think, oh, that could have been said a different way, but it was very well received. In fact, the first review was from the Naval Institute, and it was a very good review. So after Blue Jacket Odyssey was published, which was 1997, this is a long answer to your question, but he had two problems. He had all this material that didn't make it into Blue Jacket Odyssey,
Yeah.
and what do you do with it? No, you don't throw it away. Not researchers and writers don't do that. Do you gift it to a museum or, an archive somewhere? Do you do nothing with it? And he had another problem. He and the publisher had a very bad falling out. What wasn't a nice one at all. Very bad. So Bill decided with all the material he had, he would write a trilogy, a 3-book series, the amphibious operations in the South Pacific in World War II, and he would self-publish them. He knew self-publishing, in the 1990s was still very new. It did not have a good reputation. But Bill was actually self-publishing in the 1970s and 1980s. He was writing guidebooks for salesmen, broadcast salesmen, and he was self-publishing them. I mean, it was on a typewriter and a pair of scissors and cutouts and paste up, but it was self-publishing. And that's how the trilogy came about. It was very well received by all different branches. And I don't know if I ever told Dennis this, but back then I was on Amazon Advantage. Print on demand wasn't available yet on Amazon. So I was on Amazon Advantage. And I wasn't getting orders for Pacific Express one copy at a time. I was getting orders for a carton, a case at a time. So we bought a dolly, and I was taking several cases at a time to the post office. And it seemed every time I got to the post office, everyone around me had back problems. So I had to lift the cases up to the counter. And it turned out that the commandant at that time of the Marine Corps had selected Pacific Express to be on his professional reading list as required reading
Wow.
for active and retired Marines. And actually, we're still on that list, but we're also on I think it's the 3rd Marine Logistic Corps. We're on their list. So Pacific Express is really the best seller out of the 9 titles that I have on Amazon now. So that's how the trilogy came about. And
Wow.
the trilogy Pacific Express. Well, let me back up a bit.
Yeah,
Volumes
please,
1 and
because your
2.
microphone dropped out anyhow, so that's perfect.
Oh dear, is it back?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
back.
it's
We
back.
only missed
Yeah.
like 2 words, but you
Yeah.
you wanted to back up.
Oh, okay, because
Quick
I'm
cutout.
on my laptop. Volumes 1 and 2 were published in 2000 and 2001, and then I've hardly told anyone this. I was very protective of Bill's image, but maybe it doesn't matter now. In 2003, he became legally blind from macular degeneration, and that threw our life upside down and sideways, and it was really very, very stressful.
Wow.
So Pacific Express sat on the shelf for about 8 years, and I was thinking the other day, why did it come off the shelf? I don't remember really. And it might have been because maybe I thought Bill needed a project because for someone like him, his mind was still very sharp. It was just that he couldn't read or write, but his mind was sharp. And so I thought if we could figure out a way to work on Pacific Express, we should do it. That would keep him engaged, keep his mind engaged. So Pacific Express wasn't published till 2009.
Yeah, I do want to say though, Sandra, that kind of makes it even more impressive that he was able to give us these huge volumes of nonfiction books like Pacific Express while he, having a disability like being blind. I think that's for whatever reason it was pulled off the shelf as a project. I just think that's so impressive and speaks volumes about the type of writer and person, the character that Bill had as an author. So it
Well,
really is impressive.
That
you, you've
I,
read
I
this. You want to show your preface, Dennis? Oh, look at all those
no, I
post-its.
was just going to show that
It's
one of my favorite memories that I'll cherish forever in my life is the opportunity I had to uh, join Bill on the stage at the LCI reunion. And this is the book that he gave me, and he had everything already, all of these post-it notes in there, the sections that he wanted me to read
And you kept them. Oh my.
because
Wow.
of the his vision. So he asked if I would read these sections,
Wow.
and it turned out to be a huge hit at the meeting that day.
I volunteered to interview him and he turned me down. So he wanted you to interview him. Well, Pacific Express, I think it's a very heavy book. I mean, not just weight-wise, but it's very heavy reading. So if you can imagine, I read that book out loud to Bill many, many times. And it's very, it's a heavy book. It's Bill didn't write it to be absolutely perfectly correct. It's actually a collection of what he thought were the best writings by other writers on military logistics. So he wrote a lot of the introductions and maybe some segue passages. Um, but I read that book out loud to him, and we had the system when he wanted to stop me to make an edit. Instead of interrupting me, which really I didn't like, I asked him to raise his finger. I'd be in my first sentence, the finger would go up. I'd say, could I just at least read the paragraph before you start stopping me? Sandra, I might forget. So it was tedious.
Yeah.
And it tried our patience. We're both impatient people. It tried our patience. If I could go back and do all that over again, I try to be a nicer person, but uh, I think husband and wife working together tries your patience enough as it is. But when one spouse has a huge handicap, as in they can't see, and we tried all the visual aids, and as his vision got worse and worse and worse, he didn't even recognize me visually. Towards the end, I'd have to introduce myself. So um, it was it was tedious, but we did it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad
Wow.
we did, because based on feedback that I get, from you and Zach and Dennis and other people like the Marine Corps, we've contributed something.
So that's a perfect segue, Sandra, and to kind of speaking of the husband and wife duo that you guys attacking the book is, I've always wondered this is, so as you're going through and proofreading Bill's works, would you say that your style of writing was the same as Bill's, or was it completely different? And it was a perfect mesh to have to both creative sides work on a project.
By the time we got to the trilogy, I was promoted. We hired she wasn't a student. She was in the administration at UC Santa Barbara. That's where we were living then. And she did the typing, and I was promoted to proofreader and editor. And I'm not sure actually that was a promotion, but um, our styles were not that different because I came from a background as a publicist for the performing arts, but I was a publicist, and my press releases were who, what, when, where, and how to buy tickets. So they were very just the facts. And maybe there could be a paragraph that was a little more flowery and descriptive, but that was the one that might get usually got cut if the paper needed space. So no, our styles weren't that different. However, before Bill passed away, and I think this was literally the night before, I said, Bill, I'm thinking of rewriting some of the books that we did together. And he said, why? And I said, well, because I want to. I think I'm better at a lot of things now, and I have some ideas. And he said, well, okay, you have my permission. And I said, well, I was going to do it anyway, but thank you. And so I've been rewriting. I will not rewrite Pacific Express. It's almost 600 pages, and I'm not going to rewrite any of the writings of other writers. And I'm not going to rewrite Amphibians or Solomon's. I think they should stay as is. But some of the other books that we did, I'm rewriting and trying to be what's called creative nonfiction. They're still factual. You have to prove everything. I can still prove everything, but a little more of a creative style. So that's what I'm doing now with a few of our books. I don't think that, your question about working together, in the Bay Area Independent Publishers Association that I belong to, I've been in this group for about 10 years. At one meeting during a break, I remember this one woman that came running up to me. She was practically in tears, and she said, my husband wants me to help work on his book with him. I don't know what to do. What should I do? And I guess that I wasn't in a very good mood that day, because I answered her and I said, you have your marriage or you have your working relationship, but I don't think you can have both of them.
Oh man.
Well, I mean,
Ouch.
that's kind of an accepted storyline for any couple who go into business, whether it's publishing, running a bakery, a computer firm. Anytime you work with family, just it's the stress of the work, but I think it also comes down just you're literally spending every waking hour, whereas other
Every
couples
waking
you have
hour,
that
yeah.
8 hours of going off to your own profession now, so you're not around each other. But when you're working with each other, you're literally spending every waking hour, unless one of those people's a salesperson out on the road. I want to back up real quick just because I have a little bit of experience in broadcasting. You said he was before he started publishing his sales books, was he writing copy on the sales side, or where did he get his early writings of, you said he was just a fax type writer for broadcasting and all that. Was he writing sales copy? What was he writing?
Bill, he was in what's called broadcast marketing and sales. Can't hold this book straight there. This is the one of the books I just finished rewriting. Actually, it's my proof copy. He was born and raised and grew up as a cowboy in
Okay.
Montana, in a little cow town of Montana called Malta. And after the war, he got a job on a fancy dude ranch in Nevada. They were called divorce ranches then because they catered, it was a dude ranch that catered to wealthy people that went to Nevada to get a 6-week divorce. And Bill ended up marrying one of the young ladies that stayed on his ranch to get a divorce. Well, as he learned, he should have known better, but these Eastern ladies that married cowboys, they wanted to show off their cowboys, but they wanted them to wear suits and jack blazers and change them, and they wanted them to get 9 to 5 jobs and be home for dinner every night. That is exactly what happened to Bill. And there's a few years that happened before he got into broadcasting, but Donnie started out selling syndicated television programs for an arm of Allied Artists at the time in the early 1960s. Syndicated television programs were a big deal because they were filling a lot of time slots on different stations. Like Bill sold My Little Margie, Our Miss Brooks, The Little Rascals. Those are just a few of the series that he sold. And then he went to work for a company called ITC, which was a joint venture between Lou Grade in England and Jack Rather in the United States. And they co-produced some really neat TV series like Cannonball, For Just Men, Danger Man, those series from the 1960s. And Bill started his own company in 1971 because he didn't feel, well, let me put it another way. He felt that he could help the sales management and their sales teams be better salespeople. And so that is how he got into writing and giving seminars. And he wrote about a dozen what he called how-to guidebooks to sell spots on television, mostly television in his case, but also radio. And he did very well with his own company, called Broadcast Marketing Company, or BMC for short. And he was able to retire about 8 or 9 years after he started his company. He was 59 years old, and he sold BMC to a company in North Carolina, Jefferson Pilot, and that allowed Bill to retire. So um, that what was your background in
I was actually a
broadcasting?
I actually worked as a afternoon FM radio show producer for 6 years, but being in the radio, you see all of it. Going back now, I go back and watch WKRP in Cincinnati. It means a whole lot more to me now than it did when I was a kid because I understand the jokes. But what's interesting, and one of the things I learned after my 6 years is when you're in that environment, for the case of the salesmen, especially those who are writing copy, they learn the economy of words because you're trying to get this
Oh,
advertisement in 15 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute, depending on what size of the commercial. But the other thing I noticed as one of my tasks during this 4 hour afternoon show is some point during that show, while live, while still doing all my producer jobs, I had to take a 30-minute segment from earlier in that day, edit it down to 5.5 minutes, have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and have it ready to play at 5:45 before we went off of air. And what I've discovered, people, our contemporaries have no idea the concept of time. People think 5 seconds is 30. You can get a lot done in 30 seconds. But my point is when you work in those environments, especially when it's live, you truly get an understanding of what 30 seconds is, what 15 seconds is, what a minute is, and how much
mhm.
content, whether it's written word or whatever, to fit in that amount of time. And so
That's interesting. Mhm.
the economy of
Did,
words of how much you can get into a certain amount of time. A lot of people learn real quick when they get into radio sales or TV sales.
when Bill had his own company in San Francisco, one of his employees, we had her over for lunch years after the company was dissolved, and she told me the story of Bill's dreaded red pen. You know, when an employee would bring in something for Bill to read and they'd see him pull out his red pen, they knew he was in for some editing. So in my case, when Bill became legally blind, the red pen was replaced by the finger raising up. But yeah, Bill was a very bottom line, straightforward writer, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But one of the reasons I'm rewriting some of his books is maybe they can make it into audiobooks. And the way that Bill has written them, they don't work as audiobooks. I've read them out loud to myself, and I'm thinking this isn't very good. So I'm rewriting like the broadcasting years and another book, a very little slim book about how I got into sales, his transition from cowboying into selling. And I've just finished rewriting that, and with a thought in mind of turning them into audiobooks. I won't narrate, of course, but that's my thought, because audiobooks are considered the best selling today.
That is a great idea. It really is.
Especially back in those days, sales in and of itself is a cutthroat job. You had to meet expectations, you had to meet sales numbers, but then to compound that to work sales and broadcasting. I've done a lot of jobs in my life, and my 6 years in broadcasting opened my I never seen more nepotism. I never seen people willing to stand on someone else's back to take a job, take sal. The media and then media sales is, I don't know, it's the true definition of dog eat dog. And I can imagine Bill probably got his point across quick and probably didn't suffer fools well because of the type of environment that he worked in for all those years. I just would have to imagine, just for my 6 years of, and I was a producer. I sat on the outside watching those salesmen and just watching that work, and just, yeah, I can only imagine.
No, you're right. Bill was a tough looking guy with a beard. Zach, you're due to grow a beard to stay in this group.
Right? The odd man out.
He had a deep voice and he could drive people to tears, but somehow the two of us got along. I mean, I think I know why, but I was in awe of Bill's creativity, to be honest with you. He grew up during the Depression. He didn't finish high school. He tried college on the GI Bill after the war. He dropped out of 2 semesters because he had just come off the war and Operation Crossroads, and he couldn't keep his head in the books. And I would say, where do you get these ideas from? How did you learn to be a writer, and where do you get these creative ideas from? Say, Sandra, I don't know. And Bill had confidence galore. I don't know where that came from either, because he was, deserted by his father when he was 7 years old. His father took off during the Depression and never sent a dime home. So he grew up with that non-family life.
Sure.
And lack of formal education. And so did Henry J. Kaiser, by the way. Henry J. Kaiser was an 8th grade dropout.
Mm.
I think
Look what happened to him.
I think a certain level of confidence is almost a survival technique, right? Especially when you're put in those situations where you're put upon yourself at an early age to figure out how to raise money or to acquire the needs for yourself and or your family. Obviously, confidence comes with sales, but yeah, I think once you get that confidence and you realize that the way you present yourself to people that you don't know tends to benefit you. I think once you make that realization, it definitely helps you in sales, but more importantly in networking. Because what's the fundamental of sales is networking, right? You can't sell a product to somebody who don't know they want it if you don't come off as a personable or a networkable person. I mean, what's the biggest cliche in the world is the old shady used car salesman. And that's
Yes.
because of how they would bring themselves off to the point where it's the Simpsons had
Yeah.
based on that for 40 years. So confidence definitely, I think, is a survival technique that people pick up early when they're put in that situation.
You're probably most certainly right. As Bill said, he said if you were a kid during the Depression, you grew up fast,
Hmm.
especially in his circumstances where, the father ran off and left the mother with four small children in this cow town. So, uh, I wrote my own little preface in the broadcasting years. It's only a page long, but I had some thoughts I wanted to say. So the book has two prefaces. But I don't use the word preface because people don't like prefaces. They tend not to read prefaces, forwards, and introductions. So I don't use those words anymore in my book.
That's right.
But um, um, I've lost my train of thought about.
So, as somebody who's been carrying a firearm for over 13 years daily, one of the biggest inconveniences is when you come home, you need to take your firearm off of yourself and put it somewhere safe, somewhere secure, especially if you have kids. Now, I know most of us are responsible. We have a gun safe somewhere, but let's be honest, usually these gun safes are big, they're bulky, they're kind of out of the way because they're a bit of an eyesore. Your wife doesn't want them where everybody can see them, so sometimes they're in your closet behind some clothes, sometimes they're in the garage, sometimes they're in the mudroom. And let's be honest, taking your firearm out and walking to those locations to secure it is a pain in the butt. But you have to be a responsible firearm owner, especially if you have kids in the house. That's why you need to get yourself a Stopbox Pro portable gun safe. You can make it non-portable. You can drill some holes in it, mount it to a place of convenience in your house, but it requires no batteries and no electricity. You simply come in your house, walk up to your safe, choose your finger button combinations, open a safe, remove your firearm from your person, put it in the safe. If you close your safe, just that easy, it's secure. So do yourself a favor, head over to stopboxusa.com/D410 and get all the information today on your Stopbox Pro. When seconds count, trust the only non-fail firearm storage box, Stopbox Pro, at stopboxusa.com/D410.
Sandra, before we leave this topic, is there my next question that I had? It does come back to Bill in general, the confidence, the books that we've talked about so far. I didn't know Bill as long as you guys knew him. I'll never forget the phone call that I got from him to offer me the opportunity to be an early reader for Operation Crossroads. I was in the Santa Monica Library working on my book, and I get a call from him. And so for our audience that has heard us say these names like Pacific Express, The Amphibians Are Coming, if I could give the audience a hard sell just how special these books are to me, before asking this question, I would love to take the time. So the 3-volume that we keep referring to, this Amphibious Forces in the South Pacific trilogy, it's made up of 3 books. The Pacific Express is the 3rd one we keep talking about military logistics in the South Pacific. The first 2 are very, very special to me, too, that I cited in my own book right there behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So The Amphibians Are Coming has a very special place in my heart because that's the volume 1 of what sounds like Sandra said, the leftover material from Blue Jacket Odyssey. That one right there that Sandra's holding up. The Amphibians Are Coming, one of my all-time favorite books, because when I was working on my book, I came through it and had no idea. Basically, The Amphibians Are Coming is a breakdown. There's 4 main parts of that book. Destroyer squadrons. We have the LCT Flotilla 5, LST Flotilla 5, and then the last chapter, my favorite one, LCI Flotilla 5, which was my grandpa Stephen Gansberger was in. And I remember flipping through that last chapter, couldn't believe it was about Flotilla 5, and then I see an interview from Elmo Angelo Pucci, who was my grandpa's his best friend on the 329, and I just froze, and it was amazing. And so with that, the second book is the Solomon's Campaigns, which is basically Guadalcanal to Bougainville, the South Pacific campaign of the Allies. And then the third book, Pacific Express, all about military logistics. Now, the hard sell for all 3 of these, they're massive books, they're great, they're full of amazing stories. The next question I have for you is, going through all of these trilogies, these nonfiction, these interviews that you're talking to these World War II veterans, are there any special moments that from the editing, researching, interview process that stand out to you for such great books? Because when you look at the citations of these books, Bill did so many different interviews. From what I understand, you were present for a lot of those interviews. Like, was there any special moments working on those books that you can recall that you like to talk about?
Yes, I loved meeting these veterans. And, we, after Amphibians was published, and especially after the Solomon's campaigns was published, we lived on the road, crisscrossing the country, going to any and all World War II veterans reunions and conferences. And, I was enthralled by these stories. And I, I'm going to tell a really quick story to back up to the Jeremiah O'Brien. Bill was invited to, they did get the ship in shape to return to Normandy. They raised enough money and were able to get it in shape. And Bill was invited to be one of the older uh, sailors on the ship. The younger sailors from the Maritime Association were going to, actually sail the ship. But he was invited to go and, sleep in the bunks and chow down and all of that. And I came across a cruise ship, Royal Viking, that was making the Atlantic crossing to be at Normandy for the anniversary. So I did a sales job on Bill and talked him into going to Normandy on the Royal Viking. And I kind of felt guilty because I think, gee, sailing on the O'Brien, that would have been the experience of a lifetime. But Bill accepted reluctantly. He went on Jenny Craig and lost 20 pounds. I signed us up for Arthur Murray. And we went on this cruise. And I remember a couple of my friends saying, Sandra, you're not going to enjoy it. There's going to be all these older people there and they're not going to talk to you. And, you're not going to enjoy this at all. It was one of the most meaningful, I don't know how many days it was to cross the Atlantic, but one of the most meaningful periods of time listening to the stories. At our particular dinner table, one of the veterans was in the Army. He actually landed on Omaha Beach and ran up the ladders. They weren't called that, the nets, and survived. He wouldn't talk about it. He didn't say one word the whole time at our meals about that. And another veteran, I don't know how I got started talking to him, but he took a photograph out of his wallet. It was old, had been folded, it was wrinkled, and it was him as a young kid pointing a rifle at about 10 or 11 Germans, all with their hands raised. And I'm listening. I said, "Wow, you're there all by yourself waiting for backup. I mean, it's you against 10 or 11
Wow.
of these Germans." And he said, "Yeah, I was scared to death." But he carried that photograph, for 50 years
Wow.
in his wallet. And he said, I don't know if this is true, but he said, I've not shown it to many people because no one asks me about it.
Mm.
Wow. That
So,
that's an interesting and probably a
Wow.
very authentic perspective of, as living historians like Jeff, myself, and Dennis recently got into the hobby. One of the things we try to do with, obviously is keep history alive, but we oftentimes try to quote unquote metaphorically put ourselves in the shoes of the people that we're
mhm.
studying up on. We've talked to many people who've done battleground tours, but it never occurred to me what's the one thing just about every American service personnel experienced wherever their campaign was. That was a long boat ride in the open ocean. And what a better perspective. Here you are on the open seas for however many days it took you. Granted, you're not zigzagging and you don't have the fear of being sunk by U-boats, but you could sit on that parade deck and look out over the ocean and really have the perspective of what so many service personnel stared at, right? But then on top of that feeling of being alone, even though the ship's all over the place, and then to think about the fear of being sunk by a U-boat or air attack. I
We,
mean, that's a very unique perspective of what just about every American-based service personnel experienced was that long boat ride.
um, I met a couple of famous people while I was working with Bill. I met Colonel Tibbets, who flew the Enola Gay and
Wow.
dropped the bomb on
Oh, wow.
Hiroshima. That was at the World War II Museum in New Orleans. They had I think it was 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and Bill was invited to participate in the ceremonies there and the big book signing. And our table is our table is between Colonel Tibbets and Stephen Ambrose.
Oh, wow.
And there's
Wow.
Bill and Sandra McGee in the middle. So,
That's pretty
and
awesome.
then I
It's
met Don Mosley, who's a radio person, NBC. I think that was his career. And he was at Operation Crossroads in 1946.
Wow.
And on my website, I have the radio broadcast that was taped 79 years ago today at the Baker Blast. And Don Mosley was one of the on air radio people for that broadcast. And I met him through Bill. So I don't know. I almost feel like I might have come across as a groupie, but I'm asking these men, hundreds of questions because I don't think I could have done those things that they did.
No.
Mm.
I,
wow.
definitely.
Talk about a pinch me moment sitting between Tibbets and Ambrose.
Yeah.
Wow. Good Lord.
Wow.
Stephen Ambrose had already come out with, oh gosh, what was his Band of Brothers?
Yeah.
I think he had just come out with that because Tom Hanks was also at those ceremonies. So, that was a big deal. Yeah.
Mm.
So those were pinch me moments. I think another one was seeing my name on the cover of books, even as the with it person. I want to say in Bill's defense, he wanted it to be William L. McGee and Sandra McGee, but I felt that unless I went under a pseudonym, I felt that his name carried more weight on the book, and I insisted I be the with it person, and I haven't changed my mind about that since. So, but he insisted that my name be on the cover. So that was a pinch me moment.
Wow.
The
Sandra, when you were talking about the the way that almost like the stars aligned for you to be in the various places that you were, and it just perfectly married up with your own personal um, admiration and love of the subject, because there could have been someone else that was placed in that position, but perhaps they were there because they were forced to be. And it's interesting the way, and it made me the reason I mentioned that is that it made me reflect on my own experiences growing up. It made me think this story of when I was growing up. I grew up in a very strong, independent, fundamental Baptist home, and so we were not allowed to watch movies with cuss words, and we couldn't listen to music with cuss words. And so what that meant was, as a kid and as a teenager, we could only watch movies and listen to music that didn't have any of those. And that meant that I could only watch the movies from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, right? So you see where this is going. So, and then I'm listening to big band music, and so then you fast forward to
students
now I
and the
have this
rascal.
love of World War II history, and I'm interviewing hundreds and hundreds of World War II veterans. Well, I'm like a little time capsule. And they're talking to me, and I'm talking to them about Artie Shaw, and you mentioned Arthur Murray and the dance schools, and you're talking about Bing Crosby and the actors, and I'm just dropping names left and right. I know exactly what they're talking about, and I can tell them the songs and the movies and it's really interesting. The reason I mention that is it's really interesting to see how that the grand architect lines people up on these paths where their mission is to preserve the stories of those who've gone before, and the grand architect makes sure those people get on that path. And I'm just honored to be a part of it. And when you were talking about it, it made me think about that.
Well, I think getting back to Bill and I working as a team, Or is it Bill and me working as a team? I don't know, or the other.
I think it depends on what year you went to school, because
Right?
it. But back when I was in school, it was them and I. Now I think they switched it to I and him, so I don't know. I don't know the rules.
That's funny. Um, I failed to mention that we're both workaholics. I I've always would rather I always preferred creative projects to raising a family, for example. So, you know, I told Bill I should have been with him during his broadcasting years, because one of the things that broke up his marriage was Bill was on the road all the time traveling, wasn't home for dinner at 5 o'clock. So, um, I said I should have been with you then, because I would have been on the road with you. And when we did get together in 1981, we both had the same work ethic, which is 7 days a week, 24 hours. And I love having my own little publishing company and being independent, and I can't speak highly enough for it or about it.
One of the questions I had, and Dennis kind of mentioned it with the interview process. When you guys did your interviews, did you capture any of that on audio, or was it pretty much all written?
Yes, it was with permission. It was with a recorder on the telephone. The interviews were either done on the telephone or in person, and they were captured on audio cassettes. And I think, Dennis, did we give all the audio
Okay, the
cassettes to
next
the?
question is where are those cassettes at?
Don, way ahead of you. I've been working with Sandra. Once I found out those were on tape, I've been dying to get those from the Museum of Fredericksburg, where they
Do
are
they
right now.
have them? I
So
can't remember.
yeah, so they have all the
I
cassettes that Dennis helped
Okay.
catalog, and I've been email blasting them for the last
We
like
won't
year,
give
trying to
them to
see if.
you.
Well, they don't have them converted yet. The issue is
Oh,
they're still cassette format. They don't have them digitized yet, and that's like they don't really have the equipment to digitize old cassettes yet. But they said they are,
I
from
was
what I gather, they are
Well,
working on it.
I was going to
I
say
have say
if there's a trust relationship that can be set up between the three of us, we can make that conversion happen quite quite easy.
That's exactly what I told him. I was like, I have the equipment. Just give me permission to send those off to me. I'll give them back. Like, just let me digitize. So, but it's obviously it's
yes.
museums. Sandra said it earlier. It's like that's technically theirs now. So it's
I rushed the gun. I don't know. We had these terrible fires here several years ago, and I got to thinking, oh my God, I've got all these things here, and I I don't know. Maybe I didn't rush the gun. I'm
No,
not
that's
good.
you didn't. It's better there better with them than any of us.
I do
My
have
house could burn down.
I was going
Like
to say
I do have an
I was going to say that's
I,
not an unfound fear, because anybody familiar with World War II, we are all perfectly aware of the amount of history that was lost due to a collection and a
yes,
fire in a single
well, that's
location.
true. The
yes.
fire of the record.
And
And
Sandra, they
I do
those
have an audio recorder. So, I
hmm.
mean, I'm all for doing what you need to do with the interviews. And if my old fashioned audio recorder would be of use, I will lend lend it.
They take good care of that stuff. It's on a third floor, so you don't have
No,
to worry about floods.
I'll lend it to one of you, not to the museum. I'll never see it again. Oh
I
my
got to
God, they might
witness
be listening to
firsthand
this.
when artifacts are, delivered. I had the privilege of taking, Bill's
Wow.
items into there, and what they do actually, the first thing we did was we took it into this vault, and they clear the vault, make sure there's no humans in there, and they seal it, and they remove all the oxygen from the room, and it kills any bookworm, any parasites,
Oh,
anything living that's in that room or in those documents or in those tucked away silverfish in a whatever. Everything dies, and they keep it in there for a considerable amount of time before they bring it out, and then it goes back to this sealed area in the archive. And so I was highly
hmm.
impressed when I saw
I
that.
didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty exceptional. And they're, like I said, they're on the third floor, so it's, you don't have to worry about the flooding and all that.
Oh,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
yeah, it's state of the
Um,
art. It's pretty awesome.
And speaking of
but
state of
they
the
don't. They
art,
can't digitize evidently.
speaking of
They
state
can
of
do
the
all
art,
that, but not digitize.
speaking of state of the art, gotta love 2025. Not only can you guys go on Amazon and buy the book of everybody on this podcast but me, because I haven't written one, but for $36 you can get a cassette deck with a USB so you can digitize your tape.
That's true.
Right now,
Yeah.
it's got a USB, it's a tape deck, $36. We can start digitizing those tapes.
That's
Yeah.
what I told them. As soon as I'm next Fredericksburg trip, I'm gonna with the rucksack, everything, all the equipment's gonna be in the backpack, ready to go. So,
Well, you got a place to stay, Zach.
heck yeah.
They might be listening to this podcast, but Zach, you think that's the only way that they'll give them to you is in person rather than mail?
Mhm.
Yeah, you know what? I was really lucky that they lent out the books that I still have to go through. Really lucky with the books, but I think something like cassette tape interviews with old veterans, that's a little bit too risky
Oh.
to be sending out. So I did tell them though that it's like as long as they have access and allow me to digitize it when I'm there physically, that they said they had no problem with it. So
Yeah, because there's
you know,
just too many hands involved. Once you
yeah,
once you put in that envelope,
yep,
That's true.
you got what,
Lots of
28
hands.
different stops between there and where
yeah.
it's going with the postal service. Yeah, it's too much of a risk, right? I'd be like saying, hey,
Yeah.
send me can you mail me the Declaration of Independence so I can take a copy of it? No, you're not here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Don, I want to say something. I don't know where we are on time, but I want to say something that I made. It took me 5 years to make this decision, but I made the decision this year. I wanted to leave the copyrights to Bill's World War II military books somewhere. I didn't want them to disappear when I'm gone. And one day I got the idea of Dennis or Zach, but I couldn't decide. And so we had a three-way
Back
Zoom
pick, heads or
meeting.
tails.
Right.
I'm right now my paperwork reads that the copyrights go to both of them, and I don't know how they're going to sort it out, but I know they're going to be in very good hands one way or the other.
I think every other week,
So
and Dennis gets it every third Monday of the month.
Right. Yeah.
Custody.
And much like us kids from the Gen X era, you got to meet up at McDonald's parking lot.
Such an honor. Such
It
an
really
honor.
is.
Awesome.
It really is.
Beautiful.
It's just
well, and you assured me that when you turn a certain age that you'll find someone
that's right.
Exactly.
to carry them on. I just don't think they should go away, but I'm not at the level where a big publisher is interested because they're looking at sales figures, like in the six figures a year. Well, I'm not there. So I'm just really pleased with my decision.
Oh yeah. And speaking, I think you touched on it earlier too. There's nothing wrong with self-publishing your book. Like I self-published it. So for anyone in the audience that are, it's daunting enough to write a book, to have to worry about writing letters to potential agents or publishers, it's like that can be daunting. If you don't want to do that, self-publishing is, it's easier than you think, to do Kindle Direct Publishing on Amazon or some other. It really is. So at the end of the day, I chose for several reasons to self-publish mine. And I really would highly recommend that if you want to write something, just self-publish it. It'll
the whole image around self-publishing has changed. As I'm actually on the board of this Independent Publishers Association in the Bay Area, and there's several hundred of us. We're all self-publishers. The image, there's no longer the stigma there was. Yes, there are some books that are, done in 5 minutes and they're not that great, but overall, I love self-publishing because I'm in control. No one's going to cut the photos. No one's going to change my copy. And I can change the copy every day if I want and upload a new file to Amazon. I mean,
that's right.
I'm
Exactly.
kind of an independent person, so I like having that kind of control.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, we're all self-publishers, right? We self-published our own podcast. 20 years ago, you'd have to have a radio station hire you. YouTube creators and people who create video, they're self-publishing their own video content. Whereas in the 90s, if you couldn't get on TV, maybe you could buy a time slot on your local public access TV station. But other than that, and so almost everybody, if they're the modern phrase of content creator, whether it's a podcast, video, or paper, media, we're all pretty much self-publishing nowadays. And
Well said.
and it gets rid of the gatekeepers, but more importantly, not only the gatekeepers, the beak wetters. In the past, there's always that one person who you had to have involved in your transaction who always got their beak wet. And there were so many of those people that by the time things got published, whether it was music, a magazine, or an article, a book, the creative force behind that got less and less of the returns because so many other people were involved in that process, which you didn't have a choice in those days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it leaves more control. And to the point of your copyrights, those are living, breathing things. Those things have to be kept up on, right? Those have to be refiled, maintained. Those aren't things that you can let slip. Not in the same way, but as an IT guy, someone who's been working in the IT field for 20 years, one of the most common things when someone's, hey, my email's not working. Oh, you let your domain name expire. You forgot to renew it. It's kind of the same thing as a copyright. It's only good for so many years, and you have to file the paperwork to make sure that your ownership over that keeps up.
Self-publishing has, according to the meetings that I go to, self-publishing has given the big five in New York a serious run for their money. And I can't remember the name of this book, but there was one author who was turned down by the big publishers in New York. He self-published and he won a Pulitzer for his book,
Oh,
a
wow.
self-published book. I don't remember the author's name or his book, but um, that's an incredible story.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you think about it, self-publishing is probably helping keep the paper format alive, right? I mean, when you only if you had fewer people, less self-publishing,
Yes,
the
that's
only
true.
people who are putting out paper material is the big five, as you were saying. They only have
Hmm.
so many IPs that they're willing to risk their money on each year. So the the printed book industry would probably be substantially smaller than it is now if people weren't self-publishing and putting content out there. Not to mention the audio and the digital format of it.
That's a very good point. There'd be a lot fewer printed audio and ebooks,
Mhm.
actually, a lot fewer.
Yeah, you guys both bring up really good points. I think someone said it earlier to Sandy, you might have said it earlier, is you can, if you self-publish on Amazon, you have total control where if like, let's say you go through and you found a typo, you can jump right in there and
Hmm.
fix the PDF and re-upload it. And, it doesn't
That's
require
right.
a new edition or anything. So it's like that,
Yeah.
that control, it does feel really good to have that. So I could see where some people would prefer to self-publish.
It happened
But
to me
I
with my
was,
book Clear, about my 20 something years in emergency room. I sent a copy of my book to Dr. Patricia Bay up in Redding, California, and she specializes in PTSD and whatnot. And she had me on her podcast, and she was like, "I love the book." And she says, "I recommend that in the section part 3, if you have the ability, if you could put a disclaimer that says if you're currently suffering from PTSD or whatnot, you may want to skip this section, such and such and such and such." And I was like, what beautiful advice.
Oh yeah.
And because of self-publishing, I was able to do it. And just as Sandra said, the next batch that goes out, the next ones that sold almost instantaneously, relatively, compared to how things usually work. But you just upload the change, and now all the books have that disclaimer. It's pretty awesome.
I didn't realize it was that instantaneous. I
Oh
didn't
yeah, it's
realize you,
fast.
oh,
Oh, it's
yes.
fast. Oh yeah.
I didn't realize you had
Uh,
the ability to unlock, update, and relock in your manuscript.
Yeah.
On
Oh yeah.
Amazon. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Actually, I uploaded the new ebook version, to Bill's book about how he got into sales. I uploaded the most recent ebook version yesterday late afternoon, and by when I woke up this morning, I did a look inside, and it was already on
So awesome.
Amazon. I do want to say, because Bill and I had another book in the works. I don't know that I'm ever going to write it because I'm not sure there's a market for it, but um, it's about self-publishing, being a self-publisher and marketer. And marketing is where a lot of
Yes.
authors and self-publishers, they hate it. They maybe don't know how to do it, but they definitely don't want to do it.
That's
And
amazing.
um,
It just changes so often, and it's marketing is one of those things. Like if you're going to do it and you're going to do it yourself, you have to. It's one of those things you have to keep up on. It changes, especially now with technology and algorithms. It changes so quick. I remember, and this was I've been out of radio for 8 years now. I remember when I worked at uh, the radio station, Facebook was still all the rage, right? This is back when every commercial had a Facebook link, every author either had a Twitter. They were spending money to bring in Facebook consultants to explain what the current algorithm was. And a perfect example at the time, this is 2013, 2014. They had discovered through this consultant at that time that if you put up a Facebook text without image, that it would not get any shares. But then if you try to take an image and then embed a phone number or a lot of text, their algorithm could detect the phone number and detect so much text that they knew it was marketing and they wouldn't share it. And so you literally had companies spending money to have consultants tell you how to get around the latest algorithms in order for your content to be seen that you're publishing. And that was a huge thing. Now, Facebook obviously has died down, being replaced with TikTok and other sources, but the industry is the same as like because it changes so quickly, it's so hard to keep up on unless you are in it or have somebody on your team who's in it all the time just to keep it going because it's constantly changing.
yeah, that's why on Facebook, you'll see that actually this trend started fairly recently, where in the comment it'll say link in the I'm sorry, in the where you the text
Mm-hmm.
where you're writing your post, that's the word I'm looking for. In your post, it'll say the link is in the comment because just as you said, Don, if Facebook detects you're gonna send somebody off of Facebook, they might not share your post that often, and
And
it
not only that,
changes
but
all
by
the
putting it in the comment, by people going to your comment and reading it, it's considered as an engagement, which then
Yeah.
pushed out more. So by them going to the that's why like you'll see a lot of TikTokers or Instagrammers say, "Oh, say this word in the comment. Say this word in the comment, and we'll reach out to you." Well, what they're doing is they're getting people just to comment so that it shows engagement. And these are all little tricks, and then after a while, they'll crack down on them, and then they have to find new ways. But yeah,
tricks. Yeah.
marketing is it's just so tricky nowadays.
Brutal.
Well, what goes along with being an independent publisher, of
Mhm.
course, is the willingness to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's a lot of authors, they don't want. Bill had a saying, and I'm going to clean it up, but as military men, you'll be able to guess what his original language was. But Bill had a saying, and it was the only way to write is arse in seat.
Mm-hmm.
And, that applies to almost any aspect of independent publishing, the writing, the marketing, the formatting of a book, all of that. But anyway,
Well,
some of us like it.
I think that's a perfect way to end with this last question. Speaking of Bill and advice and sayings and things like that, unfortunately, Bill is not around anymore. He's such a gifted author and a great guy. Do you think that Bill would have any advice for future writers or anybody interested in following in his footsteps, writing World War II history? You think Bill would have wanted to share any advice tonight?
I'm really glad you asked that question. And actually, I hate when people answer saying that, and I just said it. That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked it, but it's actually on my notes here. One of the things that was very, very important to Bill is capturing the stories of World War II veterans. And I think he would extend that to atomic veterans, Vietnam, and so forth and so on. Um, that was very important to him. And to Bill, it didn't matter whether you were going to capture the story just for your family or for a bigger audience. But that is what I think was behind his wanting to tell his story in Blue Jacket Odyssey. And we created a 2-page download. It's on my website of how to research and write your military memoirs. And the tagline is, it helps to have a checklist. So, it's a checklist of how to get started, the very first step, and get the 3-ring binder and the separators and things like that. It's just literally step by step, and it's complimentary on my website at McGeebooks.com, and you can go there and download it. But I was fascinated by the podcast that Zach and Dennis did in March because I almost wanted to start the research for Bill's military history all over again. Because I think, since the internet, which is amazing, I think it's just become so much more streamlined to get information.
That's
Oh,
one of
And
yeah.
that's one of
yeah,
the things I wanted to ask a little earlier is how the research gathering, how that occurred back then. I mean, I'm sure
by
it's a lot of
mail,
time.
telephone, mail. Bill got his in 1991 when one of the volunteers said, "Why don't you write a book about the Naval Armed Guard?" He literally, I don't know if he phoned, but he did write because I typed the letters to the records place. I forget where they are or were in the Midwest, but that's where he wrote by mail. Where were they located, Dennis, the or Zach, the place that burned down?
Oh, St. Louis.
Lewis.
St.
Yeah.
Oh,
Louis.
St. Louis. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's
Now,
really interesting, and you never know what you're going to get when you request records like that. I just randomly request from guys, and sometimes I would get discouraged here lately because you get records back and there's like 6 pages, and you know that there should be about 100, right? And you're really dependent on people that maybe are just punching in and punching out, and maybe they don't feel like scanning all of the pages into someone's file to send to you. And it really does come down to their integrity. But I keep doing it because of what happened yesterday. I got a packet in the mail from a UDT Frogman, Team 14. And it just so happens that in there is a letter from the guy's senator who he was at a party with the Frogman who was home on leave. And he told the senator his entire story. And the senator wrote this story of essentially this guy and Team 14 through the Pacific. And it's like 2.5 pages of history that I would never have had if I hadn't gleaned from Zach how to get these records and then taken the time to submit them. So that is another lesson on research is don't get discouraged. Just keep plugging away because sometimes you're going to get blanks, but you're going to get those nuggets.
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
interesting is, and I've learned this. I belong to the National Association of Atomic Veterans. Well, Bill belonged, and I've kept the membership up. And on their military records, and this includes Bill's, there's no mention of his service at Operation Crossroads.
Mm.
Um, and that's apparently true with, do you know why that is? I know that, they had to sign secrecy
Yeah.
oaths,
That's what my
but
guess would have been is the secrecy of the matter, like
uh,
the non the they weren't allowed to disclose it or talk about it. My guess is the top secret nature of that whole operation. Kind of like the Navajo code talkers is like they weren't allowed to talk because it was still classified even after they left the service.
And then by the time that it was declassified, the people who knew the names of those involved, that paperwork was either never filed or long gone.
a lot of children and grandchildren of atomic veterans are trying to get benefits because their father or grandfather passed away from, diseases possibly caused by
Sure.
ionizing radiation. And these people can't prove that their relatives were at these various atomic tests because they're not on their records.
Yeah, that would just come down to being able to have a muster roll, which would show they were on a particular ship at that particular time that the ship was there. So it may not be in the service file, but if their name is on a muster roll showing that they were there when the ship was there during the testing, that would probably
That's a
help
good
them.
point. Mhm.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
If you guys
Yeah.
haven't seen it, go on YouTube because I don't remember all the details, but there's a very cool video talking about when we started doing the Manhattan Project, how a couple of engineers at Kodak Film figured out what was going on because of the amount of fallout in the atmosphere. It was affecting the Kodak Film in their manufacturing plants on the East Coast. They were they were getting film canisters back like you sold us exposed film, and they're like, there's no way. And the engineers figured out, and there's a whole YouTube video on it, how Kodak messaged the government. They figured out what was going on because of the levels of
Wow.
fallout in the atmosphere was actually affecting the negatives in the film and the photo paper in the Kodak manufacturing plants. It's crazy.
Where is the fallout coming from?
It's just from the atmosphere tests that they were doing in the early days, like just the smallest minute effect. And I've also seen a video that shows there's a clear, like when anthropologists and scientists look at human bones and human remains, there's a clear timeline of the human genetic makeup before the nuclear program and after. That basically anyone born after the nuclear program, our
Oh,
DNA shows, there we have a different DNA and just even pollutants in our bones and our skin from pre-nuclear program to after. Like there's a clear define in our DNA just from all the atmospheric pollution and water pollution just around the planet.
wow.
That's really interesting you bring that up, Don, because I had a college professor, shout out to Ralph Taggart in evolution class, who actually talked about the fact that, like, not only is it film, but it's like we can't even take accurate measurements of pre-nuclear days in the atmosphere because of the effects of all of the nuclear tests that we've conducted. It's like now it's shifted almost mathematics where it's like we can't take measurements the way we used to, or at least like the benchmark or the baseline we used to have for the atmosphere. It's been, like you said, it's been ionized too many times. Like it's like not even measurements now are off. It's human DNA. It's almost sky DNA, if you will. Like it's like the parts that make up the sky. It's fascinating what the atomic weapons have done, the effects they've had.
Yeah, and there was a period of time where it was just like between Russia and the United States, it was just, hey,
Yeah.
atmospheric sub, that we're just detonating off wherever we could, and just finally at a certain point, okay, we need to we need to calm down on this stuff because we are seeing some fallout from it. But thank you guys so much. That's going to wrap up this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. As always, head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com. You on the homepage when we publish this episode on the audio format, you can see the link, and we'll have a link on the website to all the important places to go to get books, Amazon, and obviously McGeeBooks.com. For myself, Dennis, Zach, and Miss Sandra McGee.
This has been a Digital 410 production.